The National Development Plan wants 11 million jobs created by 2030, and we're falling way behind that target. One of the best ways of doing it, of course, is to create new businesses. And there's a fascinating sea change happening in the world of technology investment, particularly in the Western Cape, the home of Silicon Cape. This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight, I'm joined from Cape Town by Maija de Rijk-Uys, who's a senior manager at PwC Accelerator. They've issued an interesting report into the world of investment and startups, and Alexandra, Fraser, who's the co-chairperson of Silicon Cape, to give us a glimpse of what Emerging Companies Insight Survey is revealing. Before we go into the survey itself, Alexandra, give me a sense, please, of Silicon Cape. It's not a geographical area where lots of people are beavering away on tablets and laptops and coming up with the next brilliant African tech idea. It's more of, I think, an ethereal concept, isn't it, at this stage anyway?
Silicon Cape is really a community-driven network for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. We have many entrepreneurs beavering away, as we say, on their laptops and tablets, creating really innovative products and services in the Western Cape. But what we're seeing is that our community is not just confined to the Western Cape, but there are growing tech businesses and a growing number of entrepreneurs with businesses that are tech-enabled springing up across South Africa.
Silicon Cape, though, Silicon Cape is sort of regarded, though, as the hub, if you like. I mean, how have you grown over the last 5 years when this talk of Silicon Cape first started emerging?
Silicon Cape has grown dramatically. We have over 9,500 registered users on our platform. We've got a huge social media following as well. We've got a very engaged community. We have been going for the past 5 years. We have a very committed exco, and we recently raised funding from FNB to further grow the organisation and the capacity of the organisation.
I mean, we're just so used to seeing great South African innovators doing so brilliantly elsewhere, and the obvious name that comes to mind is the rock star of Silicon Valley, Elon Musk, and his cousins are doing great things in Solar City, and you've got Roelof Botha, who along with Elon Musk were early investors in PayPal. It just seems that while we're doing amazing things in South Africa, the real action is happening elsewhere. Is that a correct perception?
I think there is a lot of action happening around the world, driven by innovative South Africans. We are a very innovative nation, but there are some really, really phenomenal products and services and technologies being developed here in South Africa and slowly being recognized internationally as this is a home of innovation in Africa. What we need to start doing is actually celebrating our innovations locally and taking them to the international stage. And that's hopefully one of the big outcomes from this emerging company survey that we're running with PwC, is to find those really, really innovative companies and highlight them and take them to the world stage.
And Maija de Rijk-Uys, that is a nice segue through to you. You're a senior manager with PwC Accelerator. What are you hoping to find as you wrap up your research into these fantastic startups that we're seeing spring up all over the country that Alexandra referred to?
We're hoping to prove some of the more anecdotal statements that we find flying around the ecosystem at the moment. As you will well know, and Alex sitting next to me, there's a lot of facts flying around about what's happening and what the challenges are of our entrepreneurs and our emerging businesses, as well as the other stakeholders like investors. What we're actually trying to see now with our participants in the survey is what is the real lay of the land of the entrepreneurial landscape in South Africa. The other point I'd like to make is that some of the research that has been done in the past has been quite fragmented in terms of either regional based, and we are aware that quite a lot of especially startup surveys have originated in the Western Cape region, and you know the Western Cape is seen as the innovation hub of South Africa very often. we're actually trying to prove whether that is in fact true.
I mean, that's an important one, isn't it? Because we talk about Silicon Cape as if it is this epicenter of the ecosystem. It may or it may not be. There's a lot of stuff happening in Gauteng as well, which is really interesting, and in other parts of the country too. So that's one of those facts that people go, oh, Silicon Cape, it's the center of the African technology universe. What other facts are you testing here?
We're testing a lot of facts. Actually, just so you understand, is that the survey for the actual entrepreneurs, so the emerging companies, is 81 questions long.
Sure.
And hence we're actually very surprised that we've already close to the 600 mark on completed surveys, which is obviously fantastic because it's giving us a really detailed view of what's happening. We're testing really every angle of the ecosystem, Bruce, from funding to government support to red tape hurdles to legislation and regulation to talent and skills and all the various challenges that exist there, to previously disadvantaged hires and how that looks in these emerging companies. We're also looking at exits and mergers and also the actual state of funding for these emerging companies right now, i.e. when is the last time they raised funding, or when are they looking at raising funding in the next 5 years. Also, what are their plans in terms of going global or into Africa? What are their plans in terms of selling online? So we've really dissected some good and solid detail in terms of understanding these areas.
Another way of looking at the massive response you've had of 600 responses is perhaps the sector isn't nearly busy enough and everyone's got too much time on their hands, Maija. That's another way of looking at it. But how will you utilize the information that comes here? Because this is going to be, to use an old term, gold in terms of information. How does it translate into something tangible for the likes of Alex next door to you to use?
Yeah, good question. First of all, Bruce, just by the way, a lot of the emerging companies have actually taken part because we put a very nice little prodding campaign to it. They can actually win a 50,000 Rand prize. You see, you got to put some incentive to it, otherwise they're not going to answer it.
Of course.
So together with Silicon Cape Initiative and as well as Microsoft BizSpark, who's very much collaborated with us on this project, we will be using this survey as a basis to a larger research publication that we will be bringing out to the market at the SA Innovation Summit in August. Alex and I will be launching the actual publication there and obviously coming out with the detailed findings of it. And then there are at least another 5 to 10 conferences that we will be presenting at in Q3 and Q4 of this year to really disseminate the findings and to bring it out to all relevant stakeholders in the ecosystem.
It's a bit, Alexandra, like rewriting the history books a little bit because without any tangible, credible research, a lot of myths sort of emerge about what's really going on. This gives you the nuts and bolts upon which to build, I guess.
Absolutely, Bruce. We know from international evidence that tech-enabled businesses grow faster. They generate more intellectual property, they generate more FDI, and they create jobs. And we are wanting to prove the value of tech-enabled businesses to the South African economy because we believe that this is where new economic growth will come from, as well as job creation. And when you also couple the change in BEE codes, the increase in enterprise development funding and supply chain development funding, big corporates are also very, very keen on this data to find out which companies can they possibly partner with, or products or services could they use to grow their own businesses. And the big thing about this piece of research is that we've collaborated with as many different players as possible. We've got support from the DTI, from DST, all of the technology transfer offices at the universities, Microsoft BizSpark, all the accelerators, the early stage venture capital funders. It's really been, we've brought on as many different players as possible, including the municipalities of the City of Cape Town, City of Johannesburg and City of Durban, as well as Westgrow. As well as the Innovation Hub and a lot of the Joburg programs. So what we're trying to do is get this baseline, and then what we can do is design projects and initiatives around this data. So what are the biggest challenges facing these growing companies, and what, if we had to tweak legislation, could that accelerate their growth? Do we have a growing group of businesses that are developing novel fintech applications? Should we create special initiatives around fintech, say for instance in the Western Cape, and how do we start promoting and marketing that as a group of companies?
And that's a tangible use then of the data that you will gather. Maija, what are the deadlines on this, Maija? Because there are a couple of days left for people to participate. Obviously, it's for the 50,000 Rand would be a nice little bonus, but ultimately the more insight you can get from real world players in this space, the better the research is going to be. What are the deadlines?
Bruce, the deadline is the 15th of May.
People can participate, they can still be part of this particular piece of research, which could be the big game changer for the technology-driven business space. Maija de Rijk-Uys, I thank you, Senior Manager at PwC Accelerator. She is doing the research in cooperation with Alexandra Fraser, who is the co-chairperson of Silicon Cape. Exciting things to come, no doubt, in the world of technology-enabled businesses, and they will also become probably the myth busters to a large extent of what's really going on in this particular ecosystem, as they call it. Thank you for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Till then, good night and goodbye.